Welcome to the HBR IdeaCast from Harvard Business Review. I'm Sarah Green. I'm here today with Joan Schneider and Julie Hall of Schneider Associates, a PR and marketing communications firm. They're the authors of the April 2011 article, Why Most Product Launches Fail. Joan, Julie, thanks so much for coming in today.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So why do most product launches fail? And how can you tell if what you're working on is the next Segway and not the next iPod?
Well, there's so many reasons new products fail. In fact, we have created a list of 40 ways to crash a new product launch, which is going to be on the HBR website in conjunction with the April issue. So viewers might want to look at that and consider that list before they launch their new product. But there's several really fatal flaws that people make. The first is they spend all their time on new product development and manufacturing the product, so by the time they get to the launch, there's hardly any time or money left to do it. The second is that they get research and they do testing, but they fall in love with the product, so they say, oh, we don't really need to change it, or they're not right, and they launch it and consumers don't buy the product. If the product defines a new category, you really have to leave enough time and money to educate people. And I always say that everybody gets so excited about it in the companies that they have these really aggressive sales forecasts. We're going to sell 1 million of these, but guess what? You're not going to sell 1 million of them the first year because people don't even know what it is. So you have to leave a lot of time to educate people. And the last thing is that, guess what? Some products are really successful. How are you going to produce it? How are you going to distribute it? Where is it going to be sold? The inventors come up with these great things, but they don't really think ahead. So there's a lot to think about.
Is part of the problem just that we have so many products already? I mean, if you look at a category like cola, there have been so many failed product launches in the cola industry. Is the problem just that we don't need more sugar water?
And the cola industry is unique in that, it's a billion-dollar industry, so they're constantly looking for innovation. It's very fickle, like the fashion industry. We've had 2 new cola launches, with Pepsi launching the little skinny can, and with Dr. Pepper actually launching Dr. Pepper 10, which you think would be for the female market, which actually made for brawny men and features Rambo in their television advertising. But there's over, last year alone, there were over 42,000 new products that were launched. We've seen this number in the 10 years that Joan and I have been doing research with our most memorable new product launch. We've seen this number go up, we've seen this number go down for a variety of economic reasons. But the one thing that we know remains true is that if you create a product that has a target that's going to be interested in it, many times it is going to be successful. And I think marketers sometimes fail to do that proper market research in creating a product, like Joan said, that they fall in love with and not really look for that target market.
Let's talk about an example that you worked on that didn't pan out quite the way you'd hoped. Tell me about the Cell Zone.
The Cell Zone is one of our favorite new product launches that we worked on. Cell zones had just become extraordinarily mainstream, and people were finding a need to go somewhere to talk privately. This is before texting. They launched at the restaurant show. Our firm was able to get them on the Today Show. We got a USA Today front page story, and the calls just came in, and people were just so excited about the Cell Zone and wanted to buy it. They didn't really have enough ready. So that was one key lesson that we learned that you'll see in the article. But the key fatal flaw, I think, was misreading the marketplace and contextually where the product fell. And the founder actually, and I spoke recently about this, and he said, they underestimated the potential of the texting market. They didn't see it coming as quickly. However, there's a silver lining to the story, and the product didn't fail dismally. We know now that they really found a perfect niche market in college libraries. They're actually at Harvard, they're actually at Yale, and many of Ivy League schools. And we also found out that the White House and the Department of Defense and the Pentagon have cell zones where one would assume you need to have private cell conversations. So there was, learnings as they went along the way, and we find with many entrepreneurs, that is, they launch, retreat, maybe launch again, retreat, and kind of figure it out as they go along.
That is a nice ending to the story. I wonder, though, is there any way that they could have anticipated that texting would become such a big thing and really disrupt what their business model was?
Yes, I think that you always have to be looking at the trends. You have to be looking not only at the consumer trends, but the technology trends. I think they were talking to restaurateurs who were grown-ups who were really using their cell phones. If they had been looking at the kids, they would realize that no teenager ever picks up the phone. So the audience that was coming up really were really into texting. So it's always important to stay close to what's happening in the market. You can't just look at your market, you have to look at everything that's going on.
Which changes so quickly too. You know, I think in this day and age, and we talked a little bit about this, the importance of beta launch. You know, it's hard to look contextually at trends and things that are changing when things are changing now 24/7 and so quickly. So, you know, we've seen sort of what we've called, you know, the beta launch phenomenon, which Google really perfected in just launch it, get it out there. If it doesn't work, pull it back, launch another one, and just constantly putting new innovative products out there to keep the noise level and the news level about your product and your company out there.
We've talked now about a few different kinds of products and also a few different kinds of things like beta launch, things you can do to sort of overcome some of these challenges. But is there one type of product that really is the toughest to introduce?
Well, they're all tough to introduce now because the environment is changing so quickly, but I like to say that evolutionary products are really hard, which means, you know, something that's a better mousetrap. It's an improvement over the original version, but it's not really that dramatic, or a line extension. Those are really hard to launch because what's new about that? So you really have to create things around them that make them interesting. Revolutionary products, believe it or not, can be hard to launch as well because you know what? If they're first in their category, nobody knows what they're supposed to do, and you really have to educate. The early adopters always love revolutionary products, but then there's that huge chasm. How do you get the mass audience to adopt it?
Well, let's talk a little bit about a revolutionary product. Something like the iPad was something that actually sort of got panned during its launch. The early reviews said, who's going to use this? The name is terrible. But yet they seem to be selling very well. So how does a good product like that is revolutionary, overcome a bad launch?
Well, they clearly had a market, you know, and we did a blog post with Harvard Business Review with Julia Kirby last year when the iPad came out saying, you know, they are the masters at new product launch from, you know, 1984, and we get this question all the time. People say, what is the best product launch you've ever seen? And, you know, hands down, it was really in 1984 during the Super Bowl, which set the stage for Super Bowl ads, was that launch of Apple's launch. And they've continued to really just do all of the right things when it comes to launching a new product, motivating your base, making sure that you're getting those early adopters, those influencers, those folks that love your brand behind it ahead of time and bringing them in, creating that anticipation, making a big splash at the announcement. I mean, it's almost formulaic the way that, you know, Steve Jobs goes out there, black turtleneck, and in the next product, and you're just waiting, and he's going to do it again. So they really do have it down well. You know, there are other products that, you know, were poised to change the world. Like you look at the Segway. I mean, the anticipation for the Segway was almost, you know, unheralded. I mean, it was almost like the iPad in some respects, but it didn't have a market. We didn't know what to do with it. You know, do I drive it to work? You know, I see mall security men using it now, but they didn't really have a market for it yet. It might have been a little bit before its time. The iPad, you know, nailed it. But when the Newton had been launched, you know, 12, 15 years earlier, we weren't ready for it yet. So I think some of it is timing, and then I think a large part of it is definitely having a market.
And promotion. I mean, I think Apple is genius at making everybody want what they have. I mean, if you really dissect their commercials, that you're going to be smarter, you're going to be cooler, you're going to be hipper, it just makes you a better person. And by the time people start to get it, then they have the next version, so all the early adopters want the next version. So it's just a snowball effect.
And that was, we've been researching new product launches for just about 10 years now. So we've got close to 100 products, you know, that we've watched over the years. 20% are no longer on store shelves, so that was sort of interesting to look at. But last year's most memorable new product was the iPad, and it was almost, you know, overwhelming, the amount of people who remembered it as a new product launch.
But that being said, 45% of consumers could not name a single new product in the year that the iPad was launched. So think about how hard it is to generate recognition, because it was on, you know, television, it was bus stops, I mean, front page news, it was on the TV all the time. It was pretty hard to escape the iPad last year.
Just for fun, can you tell me about the wackiest product idea you've been pitched on?
Well, people call our office all the time asking us to launch these wacky products, but one of them that sort of rose to the top was this Harvard Business School graduate who came to us with the sex chair. And this was about 5 years ago. And it was a device to help people have sex as they were growing older, because his belief was that as the baby boomers aged, you know, being from Woodstock, we would all want to have sex into our 90s. And so in principle, it was a really good idea, except what would you do with that? I mean, in those days, we didn't have social media. So which section in the newspaper, or would you go to a health reporter with that? It just seemed a little way out there. But now with social media, I think you could really do a great job with that kind of crazy product. So I think the market has really changed. I mean, even in terms of prohibiting product failure, because you can test it. You can use social media to have a beta test. You could use it to have a focus group. You can get bloggers involved. You can invite bloggers in. There's, you know, with social media, there's really no reason not to test your product and make sure that consumers can use it.
Joan, Julie, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fun.
That's Joan Schneider and Julie Hall of Schneider Associates. The article appears in the April 2011 issue of Harvard Business Review. For more, go to hbr.org.